Hey everybody, welcome back to InnRoads RPG Jam Sessions. I'm your Uncle Jeff, and I'm here with a new guest to the show, my buddy. I'm going to figure out which way I'm going to point. I'm going to point this way, Mr. Brent Brown. Brent, how you doing?
Hello. Doing great. How you doing?
I'm fantastic, man.
Awesome.
We're coming off of a RPG high, so to speak. We had a chance to play a little game called Cthulhu Confidential, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm
Mm.
still taking notes, and in fact, I've considered going by the store. Not well, more than considered. I've been looking around to find where I can get a good example of this. But I want to get a small little notebook, like journal type thing, to where I can take notes
Uh,
in, like a little flip journal. And I'm going to go buy my local discount clothier to find a fedora because I could just wear suspenders and a hat.
that is so awesome.
So I've got to do it. I've got to do it because I have to honor the work that you have put into the game.
Sure.
Um, if you guys don't know what we're talking about a one-on-one RPG experience. This is when I first started in RPGs, and again, this show is for all y'all new GMs and your seasoned pros as well. When I first started RPGs, the idea of having to do a one-on-one game session was almost paranoia-inducing
Mm.
because you're looking at me the whole time. There's, I don't get like if I'm a player, I don't get to take a break from the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
It's my experiences beforehand doing this one-on-one experience. I've done it it's one, two, three, four times. Once with Shadowrun, twice with twice with D&D, and then the last time was with Earth Dawn. And the only reason I did it with Earth Dawn was because it was a one-off because the rest of the guys couldn't make it to the game. So
Uh,
that was the only reason that we did it. And I was being very, very selfish because the GM said that I would get extra points and stuff, so I could advance faster than my
Bribery.
contemporaries. Oh, of course. So, so I that's been my experience. But before this, before Cthulhu Confidential, what's been your experience with one-on-one gameplay?
The first time I did it was with Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, and that would just turn into a dice fest, right? Because
Right.
high school, college age, you pretty much just, oh, look, I've got my character. I'm going to go jump in my well of many worlds and fight Thor and, that kind of stuff. We were just silly, basically, these ultra powerful characters. And we would just kind of go almost just through what if scenarios of, what if I try to solo the Trask? Hey, turns out you die.
You're not going
Um,
to last long.
yeah. And so I don't even know if I would count that as a real RPG experience, but it certainly was fun. We were just chucking dice and laughing and drinking Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Um,
Code
as,
Red.
in
Sorry.
the modern in my current RPG experience, I really only have had two, and they've both been very recent. The first was Reflections, which is a
Oh,
two-player RPG. I played that with Mr. Mike Perna.
meant for it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that is almost it's not a GM player experience. It's basically two players, and the rules kind of guide you through the scenario
Right.
um, of basically two samurai, or there's Western, and there's even like wrestling settings now and
Nice.
such, where you're coming together for your final confrontation, and you're kind of having a series of flashbacks of how you went from friends and allies to this death match at the end of the adventure.
Wow.
And the experience I had with Mike with that was just very positive. I mean, we really, really enjoyed it. And had I not played that, I doubt I would have picked up Cthulhu Confidential.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
just because of what you said. There seems to be so many drawbacks of being in the spotlight, and the pacing of the campaign, and trying to have one character that does everything. It just didn't seem tenable to me.
Yeah.
Um, but Reflections changed my mind a bit, and I started researching Cthulhu Confidential and saw how the system tries to compensate for only having one player.
Right.
And I thought that the design was very clever, and picked it up, and here we are.
And it's based on Gumshoe, right?
It is based on
Trail of
Gumshoe.
Cthulhu, a few other games that are out there that were put together by
Mm-hmm.
Robin D. Laws and his team at
and,
Pelgrane.
and Kenneth Haidt, yeah.
Kenneth Haidt, of course.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of like the Oracle of Cthulhu. I'm not sure.
Pretty much, yeah. He's the
Possible.
Cthulhu Yoda, pretty
If
much.
if we were gonna go and look for the beginnings of a Cthulhu cult, he would probably be the place where we would go first. But yeah, that, and actually that's really cool for you with the ability to start off with reflections as an alternative mode of doing a one-on-one game. The I don't know that I was really intimidated by this. I was really intimidated by this because I know how good a player that you are and how well you get into your characters and stuff. Not just in the games that I've run, but just hearing about playing in other games and stuff. I know you're a big Star Wars fiend, so you've got a lot of characters under your belt. So I was wondering, how am I going to kind of rise to the challenge of this?
Quickly is how you did. You pretty much jumped right on it. You did not seem timid at all.
But well, the thing is that you really drew me into the game, and I think that's kind of the name of the game here when it comes to one-on-one play. And again, this is kind of for our new folks out there, our new GMs. Don't be intimidated by that spotlight consistently being on somebody. I think, in my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, is that as I was seeing you navigate the game, it seemed like you were almost kind of freer in a way to focus more on me than not have to worry about the reactions of multiple players, that sort of thing, because it felt very dynamic in the gameplay. The back and forth, the conversations. What do you think? Am I off base there?
No, I would agree with that. And again, that's a testament to the design that Robin DeLaz has put together here. The system is very aware of the fact that both the GM and the player are on the spotlight the full time, and that creates a level of intensity that could be unpleasant if it got out of hand. And there's a section of the book called Intensity Management about the flow of the game and how it should be structured and how the campaign is naturally structured and how you should run it as a GM, where the player goes into a scene with a lot of confrontation. And, there's that pressure, there's that spotlight, there's the goal you're trying to achieve, there's the danger, you're getting problems, you're getting advantages, or edges in the game parlance. But then the game also comes with these NPCs or GMCs, game master characters, as Robin likes to call them, who are basically on your side. And that is another structure of the game which is designed to compensate for the fact that in a more traditional RPG, there'd be multiple characters with multiple skills. One character really shouldn't have all of the skills. And so these sources help fill in the gaps. And when you have a scene with a source, it is much more relaxed. The game discourages you from placing sources in danger in most cases, or having a source suddenly turn out to become evil or something like that. They really are meant to be the character's sort of security blanket and their aid. And so when you go into a scene with a source, it's much more relaxed. You've got someone that's on your side, you've got some camaraderie, and that intensity dials back down. And then you go back out again and you're more in a confrontational mode. And then it comes back down.
And a testimony to that is when I got to my character, Langston Wright, got a chance to power down a little bit with his cousin. And I went to his apartment, and that exact feeling, that's actually a very good testament to your skill. And then obviously, like you said, the design of the game of feeling safe in this area, because it was, I think game time, it was about 2 a.m. or something like that. And I'd been all over town most of the evening. I hadn't been expecting to be out, so it's not like I was like resting up and ready to go. It was just like, boom, I'm on. I got to go as a private detective. I'm running around the town. But then I get to my cousin's apartment, and I'm like, I actually felt as a character that I could relax. I could calm down. And I actually said, okay, I'm going to knock off here and then wake up in the morning and start again. So it was, that's actually, like you said, that intensity management that works out really well.
Yeah, and I kind of recognized it from board games. I like to play a fair number of board games.
Sure.
And in cooperative games, which this is kind of a cooperative game, this RPG, I like cooperative games that have that. If you've ever played a game called Ghost Stories, it's this game where there's just these ghosts coming in from different directions and you're fighting them off, and it's kind of this Asian temple of some kind or something. And it's just wave after wave after wave after wave until you die. And you usually will die. And the game is just stressful. But then you play a game like Pandemic. That's a game where You come in and it's like, oh no, we're going the world's going to end. We're all going to die. Wait, okay, you do this and you do this, and you kind of get it together, and then everything's okay for a turn or two, and then it comes back in again, and it's all intense, and then you kind of get it under control. And I've just discovered that, yeah, this ebb and flow is important in a game, and I recognized that in Cthulhu Confidential when I saw it, and it was another one of the things that told me I'm probably going to like this game.
Yeah. When we picked up the game, you had very distinct instructions on what portions of the book to read, to make sure that I was in these particular sections, that sort of thing. So it was, as a player, it really helps that with a particular system that you grab, so whether it's Cthulhu Confidential or maybe Reflections like you mentioned, as it sets you up as a character within here, it's not just that you have to play this particular character. I would imagine that later on you have the ability to design your own characters, but certainly. I think this gives you, it's one of the best archetypes that I've ever seen in a game, and this is me playing Shadowrun for a good portion of my life, and loving the archetypes and loving the narrative and the fiction of that world. The way they design this game, it really gets you into the headspace of a character in this time. We had to go through the whole disclaimer thing about the racism and the sexism that goes on in this game. It's not just about putting that in your face, but it's the context that really builds the scenes in this game. So I think as a lesson for doing a one-on-one RPG, whether you're doing something that's specifically designed for this, or you're using another system like a 5e Dungeons and Dragons, or if you're using Star Wars, even the Star Wars system, I think from Fantasy Flight might actually do well with this. The concept is, like you said, having the player character not feel like they're the end all be all. They're going to have to somehow be able to manage everything. I have to know how to fly a ship. I have to know how to do this. I have to know how to do that. And I think having those GMPCs, the GMCs, kind of the way they define it here in Cthulhu Confidential, is a great idea. They're the safety net that you have around you that gives you that feeling of a team, but at the same time, if you're in it for a solo adventure, it can still do that. So I think if you're going to be GMing a game, let's say if you didn't have a rule system like this, what are maybe one or two bits of advice that you might give a game master to make it work? What do you think?
I think it would be really important just to be very aware of the player, which you should be able to do because there's only one of them to keep an eye on.
And if you see more, there might be a little something in your Mountain Dew.
Something's going on. And just being cognizant of guiding that player, because that player does not have other people to bounce ideas off of. In a traditional multiplayer RPG, there's going to be a back and forth and give and take. Lots of ideas being tossed out and discussed, and trying to vet the best course of action. And as a GM, that's very useful, right? Because more times than not, the players are going to come up with something maybe even better than what you had in mind, and you can. Given the time of them speaking back and forth, you can sort of co-opt that and so, you just sort of write that down. And that's actually what's going to happen now.
Thank you for giving me a nemesis.
Yeah. And so the player doesn't have that, and you don't have that. And so, but what you do have is you have these sources, in Cthulhu Confidential or just general game master characters in whatever system you're playing. And they can be very useful for guiding the player. If the player is really struggling to know what to do next, they can always call one of these sources, right? And so I think having those predefined beforehand and making sure that the skills of the sources fill in the gaps that the player does not have is really important. That's probably the number one thing you want to do when you're prepping your game. If nothing else, do that. Have these sources available. And then if the player is stuck, you can say, well, this is sort of a archaeology issue, or this is a psychology issue, or this is a technical issue. Here's the source with that corresponding skill. And when they contact that source, you as the GM now have a friendly voice to prompt the character in a useful direction.
I'm trying to think if it's my unrelenting fascination with the Burning Wheel, but they have this thing. I don't know if is it Burning Wheel or is another system. Somebody out there is going to be able to correct me, so please feel free to do so. But there's this concept called circles. Where you have a certain skill level that's based off of whether it's charisma or maybe a skill that you've developed directly. But the overarching concept is that you're in a particular city. Let's say you've traveled across the desert and you end up in a city. Is there a reason why you would have been here before? If not, maybe there's somebody you know that may have traveled here. And like you said, looking for these sources, you could make what's called a circles roll to try and find somebody. And then together, kind of taking the onus off of the GM and maybe putting a little bit on the player to give them some narrative control. They can invent an association with somebody. You know, it's not like they're going to say, hey, I know the emir of this particular city in the Middle East and I'm totally in. It's like, no. I know a pickpocket that, may have a magic carpet and
I know a guy
looking for a lamp or something, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know a guy. Exactly. So it's a way to continue that bounce back and forth of the narrative.
Sure.
And I know that Cthulhu Confidential is very tight with the story, but I really felt like, and I don't know if this was you or do you feel this was a system, I felt like there was some narrative leeway as far as, you're guiding me in certain directions, and I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like I was in a kid's version of the bowling alley, where you can't get the ball into the gutter.
Sure.
But I felt like there was some narrative leeway. Is there in the game, do you feel?
I would say that's true. I think that's something that at least the scenario does pretty well. There, I don't want to give away too many spoilers because you haven't finished this thing yet. But the system comes with a story flow, which is kind of a flow chart of all the different scenes and how they interact with each other. And when I was looking at it, it's divided into two distinct parts. The upper part is very freewheeling. You'll see a bunch of boxes with scene names in them and arrows just going all kinds of different directions. For, they could get here from here, and they could get here from these two places, and they could get over here by doing these. And that's very open. As you get down towards the bottom of the scenario, it gets much more linear. And so it's ultimately there's one climax scene that's very pivotal that kind of changes everything. And establishes the direction for the rest of the narrative, which I don't think is bad. I think that's something that's pretty common in the kind of stories that this is attempting to portray. And then after that, it does get a little more linear. Whether it's from social pressures of you're trying to save someone, or you're on a timeline, there's a ticking clock, or there's going to be some horrible disaster if you don't act in a certain way. It puts you a lot more on rails at that point. But I think that by that point, these scenarios go average of 4 hours, it seems. I think that after 3, just kind of just going around exploring the sandbox, I think probably player and DM are ready for an escalation and a resolution at that point. So I think that the game actually handles that really, really well. And if someone were going to try to recreate a 2-player experience in a traditional RPG, I think that would be a wise course to follow when designing your scenario.
I think it was one of the first episodes of the Jam Session. I was speaking with Brian, and we were talking a little bit about that, like the GM funnel, where you have multiple roads. You give the players their agency to kind of run wild, that sort of thing. But and I like your phrasing there. There's escalations that can occur that can be part of your queue as a GM to say, okay, we're gonna kick this into higher gear. It's not like you're forcing a tidbit of narrative into a section that doesn't belong. Like, you're playing Shadowrun and your next cue for escalation is that these bikers attack. And it's not like you're going to have that happen in a penthouse in the upper side of Seattle downtown's Metroplex. It's just not going to happen. But you have methods of doing an escalation in the environment in which they're in. So I like that. I like that concept, and like you said, it's brought forth with really good success. I think with Cthulhu Confidential, and we've played just long enough that I feel an escalation coming. That I feel like there's I'm finding more clues that at that point is saying, okay, my urgency has just been dialed up a notch. And I think, excellent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was totally by your design, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's a way that you can sometimes also get a little lost with a one-on-one play type, because you could get lost in a certain conversation going back and forth. But I think you did a really good job of not letting me get too far off the rails when it came to questions, or letting me feel like I was getting stuck. in a certain scenario, and that can happen because you don't have multiple players saying, hey, you didn't ask them about this, and why don't you try doing this? Or their character says, oh, you know what, I'm just leaving, and that motivates the whole crew to have to get up and leave. So that's one element to also do, is the little minor escalations that you can do to keep things propelling forward as a game master. So, yeah. Well, cool. So what's your, I personally, from my perspective, I really enjoyed the game. I didn't feel like I was overwhelmed having the spotlight on me all the time, which was kind of my nitpick with prior one-on-one experiences. I kind of felt like I was being singled out, and sometimes I wouldn't mind being in the background, but I didn't feel that way here, and I felt that the narrative flow was really solid in the game. Mechanics were really good. I didn't feel like I was rolling all the time, but I was rolling at just the right moments when I needed to. What's some of your impressions? You've been able to read through the book completely. What do you think? Ups and downs with the system?
Sure. It's going to be a lot more ups than downs. I really love the system. I think it's great. Again, because it's so tailored for a one-on-one play, and you can tell that the people that put it together really thought about that and are really supporting you in the effort to do it. And so I think that's fantastic. And it's kind of interesting how many things they had to kind of go through, from supporting characters to how to handle tests to how to handle death. Right? It's not interesting if you just suddenly run out of hit points and die. Right? And you're the only one. How to handle.
The story is now over.
Yeah, we're now done. How death should be handled, how leveling up or improvements to your character should be handled. They've really gone through and thought about all the critical aspects of an RPG and tailored it for this experience. So I think that's great. I think the stories are great. I think the history they put into the game is fantastic. There's large sections on Los Angeles and New York and Washington D.C. Yeah, all the little details that they put in about who's singing in the bar, or what's playing on the radio, or what billboards are driving by. All that's in there.
I love that when you had me walk into a nightclub and you said Cab Calloway's playing. I'm like, oh man, that's so good. That's so good. I love it.
Yeah, that's straight out of the book. There's a page on slang. You're interacting with one character who was kind of a what was it? Deft cat, cool cat. Yeah. And so I got hipster. That's what it was.
The original hipster, not the hipster now, which hipsters now are just fine. It's just, it was different back then.
A hip cat, that's what he was.
There you go, a hip cat.
A guy who understands all the answers, knows jive. So there's even that kind of research has gone into the system. So I really, really like it. I think it's fantastic, and they're going to take this gumshoe 1-to-1, is what they call the generic system, and port it to other settings. And so people who aren't into Cthulhu, wait a few months, and there'll be something else coming down the line in one of the other gumshoe settings. And they have superheroes and space, and with Ashen Stars and Mutant City Blues and vampires. If you're into that, so I'm really excited about it. I think it's great. On the downside, I ordered a print copy of the book. This is the pre-release, the pre-order that I bought. And I ordered it straight from Pelgrane and got the PDF, and that's fine. There's a few just formatting things that I wish were a little bit better, and I don't know if this is the final version of the PDF or not. But when you open it up, there's a little table of contents on the left-hand side, which is fine, but it only goes 2 levels down, which is unfortunate because you get to the scenarios, and that's as far as you get. It would be great if it just went out one more level and there was a list of all of the scenarios.
Like a little subsection.
Or all the scenes. Yeah, all the scenes. Instead of I click that and it takes me up to the top and I got to scroll down to find the one that we're currently at. Right. But I can take care of that by just jotting down the page numbers next time. It's, if you're going to play not online, like I'm going to play this with my son. I'm stepping out on you, Jeff. Oh, and I've got little cards I cut out here.
Oh, nice. Okay.
You can see that. Yeah. And this was there we go. All the little problem cards and edge cards. And at first I was just going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this with them tonight. And then I thought about the cards and I'm like, oh, I have a little craft project here.
I got a choppy chop. I got all that stuff.
And they're different sizes. So you get some that are that are bigger than others.
I
And
noticed that
so,
I did. We did the old Roll20 thing where we created the cards in there. So yeah, I
yeah,
noticed that the images were different sizes.
yeah. So I'm there with my
That's right.
scissors, kind of cutting up and down little puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
It's a nitpick. Like I said, play a lot of Star Wars and the kind of fantasy flight productions of everything.
Right.
But this book was also like a third the cost of a typical fantasy flight
There
book.
is that.
So
It didn't come with a laminated like wood grain, or balsa
right,
wood
exactly,
cards.
yeah.
It's just like click,
It's
click,
not the
click.
black core laminated cards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and again, I'm a spoiled board gamer, so
Yes,
that's
you are. I see your posts.
that's not. So it's really not. I'm not knocking it at all. I'm just
Sure.
be aware going into it that you're going to need 45 minutes or so to kind of cut up all the cards. Don't just grab it and think you're going to go. And that probably would be the last thing. And again, this isn't a criticism. It's just be aware of what you're getting into.
Right. Prep time.
Prep time, yeah. When you're there and you're on the spotlight the whole time, and you are playing a scenario that is investigative, and there's clues and witnesses and suspects and places and scenes. I'm sure there are people who could improv that. I am not one of them.
Yeah, me either. I have to read it and I have to know it.
Yeah.
I have to have it boxed up and everything.
Yeah, it would take you about maybe 15 minutes before you go, what you just said directly contradicts what you said 5 minutes ago. And so this is just something this is going to be a product you're going to want to get. You're going to want to read through the rules, which are not difficult at all. Right. And then you're going to want to read through the scenario, understand the characters, understand what happened, and take some notes, jot things together. You got a few hours or at least a couple hours of prep time before you're going to dive into one of these things. All of that being said, it's fantastic. I mean, I absolutely love it. I think it's great.
Me too. I felt as a player, I really, the rules were not out of touch. I think you gave me as my homework assignment, read the first 33 pages of the book. And I was right there. I have minimal experience with Trail of Cthulhu, and that's because I actually used those rules that were ported into Pathfinder, where they brought some of the gumshoe rules into Pathfinder, and so I was using that actually in our play-by-post game that we did a long time ago, which I would love to dredge up again. But that being said, that was my only experience, and having read through those first 33 pages, I think I was ready. I was prepped. I wasn't. I think I had you'll see in the video, I had a couple instincts. It's like, well, do I need to roll this and I need to roll that? It's like, no, just let it flow. Yeah. It's just narrative driven. Suddenly you're going to trigger a move, and to use a parlance from Dungeon World, you're going to trigger a move. Just let the GM tell you and be prepared for that. So I think that'd be my advice for GMs. Just kind of be prepared to listen to those cues. Let the narrative flow. Have your guidepost ready. But there wasn't a lot of the mechanical issues to get in the way of doing it one-on-one. I thought it was really good. Well, cool. I thanks so much for stopping by. I cannot wait for our next session. So I'm looking forward to see how this turns out. I am having just a really great time with this, and it's renewed my interest in doing this sort of thing going forward. We've talked about before about scheduling is a flipping nightmare, right? Yeah. I mean, it's
much easier with two.
Yeah, it's like, hey, what are you doing tonight? I don't know. I got a couple hours. Let's put it together. We got a session that we can run through. So that makes it a lot easier. All right. Well, I think I will call it a show right there. It's been fantastic having you aboard. Thanks so much for putting this game together as well. I hope you crazy kids out there check it out as soon as it drops on our YouTube channel. I'll make sure that it's posted everywhere, Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. If you want to know more about what InnRoads is about, check us out at InnRoadsMinistries.com. You can follow me on Twitter at GSPKHEEGAN, and also follow us at InnRoads, just for INNROADS. So we look forward to hearing more from y'all, and let us know if there's topics that you'd like to approach. Maybe there's some questions that you have as a new GM that you'd like for us to tackle. Let us know, and we will be glad to help you out. But for now, thanks for stopping by. Brent, again, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Get around the table, make some new friends, have some new experiences. Thanks again for stopping by.
Bye-bye.